Welcome to Incident Prevention's Utility Safety Podcast. I'm Kate Wade, the editor of Incident Prevention magazine, and your host for this episode. Today I'm sitting down with Christian Connolly, Chief Executive Officer of Twiceme, a Sweden-based smart safety technology company that, among other functionality, enables emergency responders to access injured workers' critical personal information in the field with the tap of a smartphone. In this episode, we'll dig into Christian's professional background, how wearable technology works to protect the health and safety of utility crews, the partnerships Twiceme has been developing with PPE manufacturers, and where Christian sees the technology heading over the next decade. And so now I'd like to formally welcome Christian to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to see you. I'm excited about this, and I just needed to let you know you're my first ever international podcast guest. So, thank you for that as well. So I just want to kick things off by having you tell us more about your professional background. What has been your career path to get you to where you are now?
Sure. I started in the fintech industry, financial technology, that is, and sort of had a few projects around that and worked at a company actually digitizing receipts. So going from paper to digital, which is very similar to what we're doing at Twiceme now, actually, in order to make bookkeeping more efficient, in order to free up more time for like the CFO or financial director or what have you, for them to focus on more meaningful projects. So I came from that industry before Twiceme and then joined Twiceme in 2019. But it's funny looking back at that, my previous jobs, and seeing the striking similarities in what we're currently doing in the professional and industrial setting.
Well, so maybe tell our listeners a little bit more about Twiceme. For people who aren't familiar with it yet, maybe you can talk about what your mission is, like what you're trying to do, a brief history, and then what you're doing now to fulfill your mission.
Yeah, sure. And kind of going back to that digitizing paper, going digital, our mission is to build a digital safety standard for the industry of PPE. So we talk about PPE as personal protective equipment. And basically we do that in order to fulfill our vision and end goal, which is to have fewer accidents and get faster aid for all. So it's really about building and collecting all of these equipment producers, the brands of PPE, around one digital standard that can make people safer at the end of the day. So this whole idea started in a military setting from the beginning. So the founders, we co-founded the company, but there are other founders of the company. They came from a military setting, and they saw the need in the field for quick access to important information. So imagine somebody goes down, this is Joe, but what's the number to closest relatives? What's the medical history? Medicine, all these types of questions you don't have answers to generally. So that sparked the idea of a place or a technology where you could get that type of medical or personal essential information. So that was the sort of founding of Twiceme. And then we, from that, bridged out to work documents, inspections, and all these things that are related to PPE and the construction and industrial setting in general. So that was kind of the trajectory that we've been on and has taken us to where we are today.
Well, it was exciting for me to learn about the company because I think that there's so much alignment between what y'all are doing and the people, at least here in the States, working for utility companies, between, the emergency response functionality and also I think you mentioned briefly being able to access, paperwork really quickly. If people have different certifications, different types of forms that they've got to carry with them from job to job, being able to just use the phone, to immediately access that kind of paperwork, I think is incredibly helpful in terms of like timeliness, efficiency, all those kind of things. So, and I think that initially, the way that I heard about you is you had partnered with a PPE company called Studson, and now I've seen you've been working with Bullard, so hard hat manufacturers. And I guess that kind of leads into my next question, which is, you're working with vendors and in different types of industries. Um, what makes a good or strong partnership for your company? And are those things that you go out, are you seeking those? And if you are seeking them, like, what are you looking for? Or is it more like a PPE company says, hey, that's great technology, and they reach out to you? Or is it some combination of that?
It is somewhat of a combination. When we started in this industry, and by the way, I didn't mention it before, but between the military and this professional and industrial setting, we did a sort of a journey through the action sports industry as well. So we actually come from action sports, and that's still a division of Twiceme that's growing quickly as well. But that kind of opened our eyes and sort of put us on a trajectory and a path how to approach this type of market. So in the beginning, we were looking for the most innovative partners to team up with in order to advance the industry. And that's kind of usually how it works in a new industry or a new technology in an industry, is you have a couple of front runners that take the technology to market, and then it sort of expands from there. And Studson were the first actually PPE company to adopt Twiceme in this space. And then from there, it has just grown very rapidly. And now we have in total over 40 different partnerships with PPE manufacturers. And now we're really looking to achieve this for all part of the vision that I mentioned earlier, that we want to do this for everyone. We want to make this a digital standard because we see a lot of problems in the industry of sort of fragmentation and problems that need to be solved in a uniform way. So we see a real need for a standard in this industry. So that's kind of where that mission comes from as well. But yeah, so at this point we get approached by a lot of companies as well. So it's not only targeting and reaching out to companies. Nowadays, it's a lot of people or companies reaching out to us.
Nice. Well, I think I saw that you were a skier, and that might be how you, or at least part of how you got into this kind of thing, which is you don't ever go skiing without a helmet that's got the technology in it. And I think of our utility crews, they're industrial athletes. So, they're not necessarily skiing down a mountain, but it's the same sort of thing. And, when you are in those remote areas, whether it's a mountain or, somewhere out in a right of way where you're building transmission lines, we need to be able to get people the help they need as quickly as possible. So what are your future plans? Like when you think about the next, 5 or 10 years, do you have any like moonshot goals or plans to expand? I know you don't want to give away all your trade secrets, but I'm curious, like, how is this journey going to continue for the company?
Good question. I would say it goes back to our mission again, which is to create the digital safety standard for this industry, which actually is a bit of a moonshot. We consider ourselves the standard today because there's no other entity doing this. And we work closely with organizations like the IACA, for example, which is International Safety Equipment Association, connected to OSHA. And we work in ways to allow us to become that, but it's still quite some way to go. But I think if we could gather everyone around one standard and we could use that as a platform to then fulfill the vision that I mentioned as well, which is basically step one, reduce the amount of accidents. I mean, if there were no accidents, we wouldn't have a business. So I guess we're trying to put ourselves out of business, but if we could reach that, from our platform of creating that standard to reduce the amount of accidents, and if and when they unfortunately happen, we can reduce the consequences of those accidents. That's done from that launch platform. And we have millions of products in the market today, which means we're touching millions of heads in the industry. And that's what's really, cool for me, is that we have such a big reach as a company, as a technology, where we can build upon that to make people safer at the end of the day. And if we could, save one life or reduce the consequences of one accident, that would make it all worth it for us. So that's kind of the bigger picture. And then, connected to that, there are loads of different avenues where we engage with a lot of companies. We talk about heat stress a lot in the industry. How can we use our launch platform to weave in technologies and other companies and players in the space to, through our sort of launch pad, use their technology to make people safer? Or, we're looking into AI, of course, as a lot of other companies are doing now, eye tracking, in order to be able to think about, is this person inebriated or, affected by substances, or, there's lots of different tangents, but it all comes down to the distribution through PPE providers into the market. So we're touching all those heads, and it's not only helmets, by the way, it's different types of PPE, harnesses, workwear, etc. But using that as a launch platform to improve safety at the work site, that's our moonshot.
Well, and this is sort of a similar question. But how do you see the role of, wearable safety technology evolving in the next decade? Obviously, you guys are involved in that, but as a whole industry, where do you see that industry headed?
Yeah, great question. I see a couple of challenges for digital tools, if you will.
Okay.
Where I think there's a lot of, or I know there's a lot of sort of inertia around starting to use something new, and especially new technologies. And that's an obstacle in and of itself. But once we get past that, there's also the sort of general suspicion towards something that's new. If we talk about mobile payments, for example, before I started using it, I was a bit suspicious. Like, can somebody swipe my card? Like, how's this going to work? And I work with this stuff. But then when I started using it, it was so simple and it was so easy, and it saved me so much time, and I don't have to bring all these different cards, and I just realized the value of it. But I think that initial inertia, the suspicion towards new technologies, the form factor as well, when talking to different wearable companies, we come in the helmet or in the harness, which is already something you're wearing, so we don't really have that problem. But if we talk about different sensors or things biometric sensors that you wear on you, or augmented reality glasses or whatever it might be, there's a form factor challenge there as well. So we want to work with ways to make it super simple in order to reduce these barriers. So it should be very, very simple, very easy to get started, take one step into this digital realm, digitizing your work around safety, and then you can work from there. So that's kind of, those are the challenges I see, but also how we aim to solve those challenges is making it really simple.
I like simple, and I think the simpler, the better, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some of the apprehension is, if you don't, and not talking about me or other people, but if I don't understand how the technology works, if it gets too complex and I don't know who to ask, like, is this good? Is this bad? yeah, there's an aversion to wanting to try that, even if it's something that my boss or my coworkers want me to try. So yeah, the simpler and more easily understood something is, I think the more liable people are to adopt it. But a lot of what you're talking about, and CEOs in general, have a lot of pride, have a lot of passion for the work that they do. But in this kind of safety area, there's, I don't know, it's like a human kind of thing. You said something about, we're trying to put ourselves out of business essentially by eliminating accidents. But tell me what this work means to you. And I can't remember, but I know there was something on your website, and it's about helping humans or something like that. There's like 2 or 3 H's altogether, an alliterative thing. Can you mention that too? Because all of this, I think, speaks to your and your company's commitment to keeping people safe and sending them home to their families.
Yeah, 100%. That's it goes back to, I spoke about it previously as well. But if we think about the amount of people we touch with our technology in some way, and then we think about this sort of second order to that, which is all those people's families, and it starts to spread quite quickly, and all those companies, all those other people they employ, quite quickly we're touching a large portion of a lot of people. And what we can do, if we can leverage that to help people, we talk about helping is human, is on our website. That kind of goes back to the original idea of Twiceme, of like, I want to help, but I don't know exactly how. So that empowering aspect. But if we can help those people in a small way per person, that's a huge impact in the world on an aggregated scale. So that's definitely something that I don't think we think about it a lot, but we don't think about it often enough, because it's such a powerful position to be in. And when we build this standard for the industry, again, we're touching, through the partners we're working with, we're touching all the heads in all of American industry. That's like the group of brands we're working with. So with that scale, we can create a massive difference, which is, that really excites me and the team here at Twiceme.
So I had a question pop into my mind while you were talking. And because if somebody is in the field, they are having a medical emergency or something like that, with your technology, are there any like HIPAA considerations? And I don't know if that's in Europe too, but here it's like the Health Insurance Privacy Act. Are there any concerns that you can clear up about that? Are there any, issues that employers should be aware of? Or is the information mostly like, this is emergency contact information for this person's family, or this is a medication that they're allergic to? Are there any privacy kind of issues that you guys run into, I guess?
It's another good question, and one that we do run into from time to time. And we've solved that it's by design of how the original product is set up. So all personal and medical information is only stored locally, meaning that each, let's say a helmet, has one integrated chip, which has its own memory storage location. So it's kind of like the digital equivalent of writing something on a piece of paper and putting it in your pocket. It's virtually unhackable. It doesn't connect to anything. It's just there. So it's like a USB or I don't know. It's a hard drive basically in the equipment itself, and it's only accessible through a smartphone at close proximity. So anybody could go up and retrieve your information by putting their smartphone on your helmet. In this case, that's by design. So that's what you need to keep in mind yourself. And we put that responsibility and control to every single user, that if something happens, I want this information to be available, or I don't want this information to be available. So that's kind of a personal choice. But we've received good feedback on that and putting the control in the hands of each individual user of how much or how little information they want to make available, knowing that it could create a big difference if something happens. But so that means we're outside of, in Europe, we have GDPR, which is a big thing, or HIPAA laws in the US obviously pertains to stored information online in a database. But this is per definition not a database, because the information is distributed on local nodes that are not connected to each other. So it's virtually impossible to collect information from a centralized destination of the personal information. So it's a detailed answer, but we're outside of all that. So employers and companies don't have to worry about that aspect of Twiceme.
Yeah, see, that's super helpful, and not something, sometimes that apprehension we're talking about, that's the kind of thing, but it's like, I didn't even think to ask that at first, but I'm kind of like noodling all the things around while you're talking, and I'm like, so thank you for informing me about that. We've talked about a lot of kind of stuff today, so I want to know, is there anything else that you want our listeners to know that we haven't covered, that you think is important?
I think I was talking to a safety manager today, actually, in the utilities space, funnily enough. And we talked about the topic of all the, first of all, time saves of going digital, like going from either pen and paper to digital, or you might have things stored in like a digital drive online or in Excel sheets, but it's not automated. And making that step into digital and automated, which is what Twiceme does, there's a lot of, first of all, time saves. There's a lot of cost avoidance or cost savings. And we sort of added up all these line items together, and the end result, beyond just safety, but beyond safety and all these things we've talked about today, is actually a significant cost saving as well, which can be quite staggering once you join up all the different parts. So I would encourage the listeners to either get in contact with me or check out twiceme.com and get in touch with us, just to see what can your company gain from going digital, and increasing that level of digitalization in order to increase safety, but also save on cost and become a more profitable company. That's the sort of the beautiful intersection between all the things that we do. So I would encourage people to get in touch with us.
Well, that's awesome, because you can post your contact information up on our website, and that will be available for our listeners at utilitysafety.podbean.com. And I just want to thank you so much for your time today, Christian. Like Christian said, you can visit www.twiceme.com. Also, if you want to check out more about the company. Until next time, everybody stay safe and be well. The views, information, and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Utility Business Media and its employees. It is strongly recommended that you discuss any actions or policy changes with your company management prior to implementation.